In fact, I agreed, not contractually. I mean, I can't be held legally responsible. But I agreed to read this little book that Station Hill Press has declared a definite interest in, and God willing, inshallah, as they say, will do one of these days. And it was all written last year, between February and July. Actually, it was finished just about exactly a year ago in Baltimore. And it's called With Ruth in Mind. Ruth, R-U-T-H. With Ruth in Mind. And there's an epigraph that's an epigraph titled Ruth. 1. The quality of being compassionate, pitifulness, the feeling of sorrow for another, compassion, pity. 2. Contrition, repentance, remorse, now rare. 3. Sorrow, grief, distress, lamentation. 4. Matter or occasion of sorrow or regret. 5. A native vehicle or carriage. 6. To awaken, rouse. Definitions culled from the Oxford English Dictionary, which also tells us most, if not all, of these are archaic and or obsolete. And it's in 3 parts. Each part has a title. First one's called Or, O-R. Subtitle, To Hocus the Animals of the Pursuers by Changing Their Dream Cassettes. Parenthesis, old Tibetan trick. Parenthesis. For Tom Rayworth. Cold and windy, cloud with delicate cotton wool monkey face drifting by, frittering violins on the radio, tape drifting by the magnetic heads, and into the spaces between other heads, magnetic, electric, from here to everywhere, possibly back and on out. What is it like? What is it like? Some recall a musical theme by having the score's image appear before them, then reading it. It is conceivable that what we call remembering in the human being consists in her seeing herself, parenthesis, mind's eye, parenthesis, looking up things in a book. Thus, what she reads in that book is what she remembers. Wittgenstein, Zettel, Scrap, 653, Estuche Ingles, El Papel, Marca Bamboo, quote, is the baby out yet? Unquote, quote, no, not yet, unquote. When they listen to it, it must dimly remind them, cats to Mozart, tape drifting, Zettel drifting, someone blown clean down the block, shrieking with merriment shot. Time travel, back again, hopelessly stranger, tremulous listener, heart embedded in cliffside, sea lions bark at it, hungry and curious, many friends quite crazy, plant on table trembling, many talk in head, my name. The bats are hibernating, so now the birds hunt the twilight. Later, gigantic motorized beetles scour the night. Podog, requiescat, morning glory blooms but an hour. Cause and effect, dynamic. We have no sure means of knowing duration between each death and rebirth. The seeds of karma, dynamite. Little paws folded, big paws folded. Stagecoach takes corner, plenty of dust. The idiot wars of the young, the idiot wars of the old. Master babe Mandragora shrieks when torn out, shrieks when rammed back, needs warmth in between, appearing, reappearing, uttering language in extracurricular states. Goth space, general restlessness. Wolf down bread and meat among the boulders in the huge scarred seam, a dwarfish person of the queen's retinue, adorned on the upper side with a strongly accented border of interneural spots. He said nothing but waited, playing with the hilt of his dagger. They usually keep a considerable distance above ground, he thought, above the surface of things, as one who had never seen a mirror might wonder in what depths of it lay the face she saw. Hillsides, open meadows, disused quarries, seaside cliffs, narrow valleys, running down to the sea, open downs, cornfields, roadsides, borders of woods, even the woods themselves. Ape-like, he silently disappeared into the darkness. We are pleased to announce he had 3 concubines, famous for their beauty. Ape-like, he disappeared silently into the darkness. This is a fine, bright form, she thought, for my clansmen. Live far apart, both on the upper and under sides. We'll find a way, she whispered, never fear, but kiss me. Notwithstanding the abruptness of this introduction, set like a stone, he took a deep breath, paler shades and 2 oblique lines, rather less oblique than usual. In one swift rush, all was clear to him. It had the appearance of being sunk some way beneath, north toward the high mountain village. There is a hill track branching off. Her hair streamed out like the wings of a raven, of a uniform deep green, almost shining. He began to flee from her. But ever she followed him, chuckling, sitting on flowers in the hot sun, moving the hind wings wheel-like in evident enjoyment at the first light of morning. Pairing usually takes place in the morning. From neck to ankles, she was covered by her head. Holding itself upright on a tall column of grass, the people came out staring and pointing, their whispers rising like surf all about her. The wind kept hitting the house and shimmering in the moonlight. He approached. It was impossible to guess in what respect the form approached obscurity, since the description flatly contradicted every peculiarity of the latter concept. Large instead of small, and peculiarly bright blue, her features blurred and swayed before him. Throughout the room there were broad grins. Like fire in dry grass, the larva winced and contracted directly an ant's foot touched it. A head would appear and at once be imbibed. His words welled up like stones in the pool of faces, and since she saw no tangible manifestation of his presence, nor any attribute of him, she found it hard to concentrate and slowly closed. Antennae waving over and upon him, dawn and the braying of horns. Melancholia, early developments in physical existence cause us to experience certain attacks of paralysis. One has only to turn over the stones to see this, and then get into the chariot with quick, uneven steps, thinking gloomy and wild is the air of this place. Slow sinews, how heavy with smoke, how like an orchestra heard through a truck, quote, head through a truck, unquote. Now millions of miniature guitar picks carved from a wood called grenadilla strike the roof of that truck. No teeth are not strong enough for solid truth. Quote, immaculate interest in truth is not for human, unquote. Who is that guy? It must be his truck. Big hulking poet name of Thorhall the Hunter, back from the dead to taste the wine of Vinland. Having dined off beached whale, his comrades perished. For supper, he'll have a chunk of his truck. Heat waves raced and shimmered round the basin's rim in limpid space suffused with sunny beams. And then the axe was loud. So good it was to be crazy, mused the Archon. Look, the mutant metaphors take wing, wiping the milk off their whiskers. Having meditated much on airy things, unimaginable distances, and cosmic pie, I think I know what the white poodle dog thinks, perched in his window across the street. He doesn't. I like him. He's both eminent and reasonable. Oh, eldritch cries of the wind among turret tops stared at the dark, faint outline of hills to the east. Intoxicated in the glimmering starlight, lying back upon a low couch, spring you get for free, she thought, and mostly it doesn't turn out too well. But then life's strength lies embedded in a fresh, coarse evenness, dense like any good production of Mnemosyne. On her knee, the flare pistol lodged securely in its holster, a prime star shell in the breech, permanent event in the stream of change, followed by another and another. Yet slowness and sun have stayed with me in calm and gentle absurdity, she thought. Slowly the ice of the unformed universe dissolves, saw the dark blot against the white stare waver, move down to merge with the shadows, quote, why are you here, unquote, afraid it might be the ultimate horror foretold in legend, quote, completely normal person, unquote. But it was just a machina working by springs, moving, talking, laughing on its way to the shop. Toward morning, we begin to feel insubstantial. Our knees cease to shake. We wrap ourselves in our cloaks and walk to the grove of oaks, twisted and windblown, clutching the stony planet with roots of authority, purple and scarlet. Frequent narrative climaxes, moments of great suspense, and moments out to lunch, may be saved by one's ability to characterize one's mythic role by comic ineptitude. The slow fin in the houses of those who cannot speak, not the swift one gliding through hermetic glens from dawn to dusk. He sat in his chair gazing out at the ghostless panorama of disintegrating cones. Zapotec killers stare, stone-eyed and deified. There must be a way out of this shirt. P.G. Woodhouse probes the drift of cloud. The thing says this, oh, bless all humble. The thing also says, that's not a shirt. Trees and language in and out of the hat. Sure-footed he flows from tussock to tussock, uttering cries of revenge. Mighty breathing, sacred rapture, frantic screams. Sounds good, thanks. Tremulous frenzy, thanks. Concealed behind a canopy of palms, whence issue strains of delicate music from an invisible unclung. She leans across the table towards her companion, unfurls herself double time as fighting breaks out among the maniacal jitterbugs. Retract periscope. I will return for my change another evening. Who sold you that machine gun? A warlock, a mind open to total disaster, enlightened? Facts and figures, mere ghosts, occasionally encountered as described. This is the song of Urgod. We're living in Zomboid, where drowsiness lays its thick fingers upon us, even while we are trying to get the money to be ready to hand it on when it is our turn. He looked about at the faces of his counselors, intent, and it seemed to him full of accusation. He began to speak in a sharper tone, a quaver, clenched, pale, shaking fingers in snowy beard. Mysterious indeed were the ways. There were invisible cities, rites of the goddess, outside and above. Or were there? Well, there are tangible and intangible gifts, but not on a silver platter. The worm starts under a similar pressure, meeting in vortex of tattered posters quietly flapping back and back before it goes forward. Incorrigible intimist, mon âme, to hocus the animals of pursuers by changing their dream cassettes. Old Tibetan trick. Joseph Cornell knew it well. Well, that's the first part. The second part, to press on, is called Dragons and Gazelles. And it's got an epigraph from Carl Sagan. Some people call him Sagan. I mean, it's Russian, but it's Carl Sagan of Cornell, author of Intelligent Life in the Universe, co-author of that book with Ivan Shklovsky from Russia, and a more recent book called The Dragons of Eden. Subtitle, an essay, or what is it, an investigation of the evolution of human intelligence. And a lot of this book is from him. I mean, a lot of this section comes out of Sagan and out of Olaf Stapledon, who is the wise man C.S. Lewis. I mean, he's the other side. He's the enemy of that side. He's like not Catholic. He's an atheist head, but an atheist who knows about God. The quote is, "Late at night, when it is very still, and the obligatory daily dreams have been dreamt." You dig that? Late at night, when it is very still, and the obligatory daily dreams have been dreamt, the gazelles and the dragons begin to stir. Carl Sagan. It's prose, but it's there. And this section is for Olaf Stapledon and Carl Sagan.
Wait a minute, that was Stapleton or Sagan?
That was Sagan. The wars, dragons and gazelles, okay. The wars had bred a great number of contractors. After rinsing his mouth with the liquor, he drank a full cup, and saw, as he took up the lamp to retreat to the brink of a little cliff, gazing into the pool beneath her, a woman of his world. She inspected the ship and waved tearfully from the port office balcony. Besmeared with soot and charcoal, overgrown with hair, bent double with the nature of his errors, disfigured too by odd and fantastic dress, individual human, was impulsive and affectionate. But as time passed, the wars had bred a great many. A change came over him. He now kept his dog at a distance. He said, "What the devil's noise is this in the ward? What, a man and a woman together in the same cell? That is against rule." And now his crude nervous organization, subsequent obtuseness, and callousness of mentality would protect him forever from suffering the full agony appropriate to short-sighted world disgust. Yet there had been times when there was no occasion to regard the world as hostile to life, or themselves as deformed, when they perceived that the perfect sphere of their thought was but a bubble adrift in chaos, is what it says, right? It was but a bubble adrift in chaos, yet an elegant bubble. The system was true, and in its own joyful and frankly insincere way. Adolescents were encouraged to study the ancient problems of philosophy, to convince themselves of the futility of proving themselves beyond the universe of light. Quote, "Neither utilitarian nor humanistic, nor religious, but aesthetic. Music, spoken lyric, epic verse, and the supreme art of winged dance were constantly practiced. The rest vanished. For close on 100 million terrestrial years we endured." End quote. On the evening of which we treat, the new and highly decorated suite of rooms was for the first time illuminated with a brilliance visible 10 miles off, had not oaken shutters carefully secured with bolt and padlock, mantled with long curtains of silken velvet deeply fringed with gold, prevented the slightest gleam from being seen without. Motel room, perfect ex-con environment, all actions magical. Listening to the radio, he thought, man, there must be some people here. One of the, quote, misters, unquote, said, a student said, "Whoever touches a poem touches a man." Across mucho physical space and time, to be sure. Strange to have been operating on the margins, then move into center. A curious picture. Quote, "Teaching high school, better than psychotherapy," unquote. Alaska, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, New York, the drunkest places every moment. Takes me farther from you, my love. If I see you sad, my heart is torn. If gay and foolish with friends, I reproach you. Your playful habit of pinching people's this and that, I envy you, your beautiful hat of existence. At length they approached the metropolis with dreams they loved to sell, dragons of Eden, mere poets, as sottish as and as mere, while learned in several sciences, having reasonable philosophical and in some measure mathematical heads, their seething brains and foaming genitals still tracked, presented with a trace, they barking bounded down the trail, both joyously and accurately. The town was not particularly attractive in appearance, and everywhere reeked of sulfur from the swamp, yet was the habitat of the winged ones. I just realized, that's interesting, man, the water here is actually... Another place, yeah. While new ideas flourished in the empire, ideas they remained until strains of them floated to the colonies to be adopted in paradise. Where women in midlife sought satisfaction, men in midlife sought it too. While women were no longer ridiculous, choosing young lovers, hello, Xenia, the older man with the younger cucumber. I mean, I've been accused of this being a sexist line, you know. I mean, it probably is. But, I mean, the rhythm of it, you know, it's just... Where women in midlife sought satisfaction, men in midlife sought it too. While women were no longer ridiculous, choosing young lovers, hello, Xenia, the older man with the younger cucumber was seen as trying to fool Mother Nature. Glorious results were promised. But by now, large tracts of the higher education had been usurped by the reptilians. And they wanted her. Beautiful and brilliant, everybody wanted her. She talked only in metaphors, striking ones, never said tiresome things, was dazzling. No one was ever sure with her. They never found her. She and her decimated kin had moved on into the fourfold frequencies. That's that section. The final section is called Over There by the Hibiscus. And it has an epigraph. That's a little conversation that happened in my head. You're not coming back again?
Right back.
All right. He knows this thing. Quote, there is this young, forever young lady I'd like you to meet, period, quote. Quote, you mean the one over there by the hibiscus? Question mark. I know her, period. That's Ms. Imagination, period. Hey, she's a winner in my book, period, quote. Quote, and you in hers? Question mark, quote. Quote, oh, I don't know, period. I'm just a witchy thing. Begin then, sisters of the sacred well, and somewhat loudly sweep the string. Pow! There goes another transformer. Waiting for the ones who would build the cities they saw in dreams instead of the grotesques that surrounded them, they would still attempt to cultivate certain emotions, patterns of, quote, message waiting, unquote, in the self-contained life support unit, quote, desk, unquote, quote, local, unquote, quote, long distance, unquote, quote, Sri Yantra, unquote, quote, Motorola Quasar Color Viewer, unquote. Birds like flutes winding down around the watcher's shoulders. Patient and smooth, waiting was being with them. Time curving in the way a human face moves with its body, stupendous. Let me hold your hand, sure, let me see, here it is. Night, night, voices across the street, mildly delirious, your knuckles against my chest, not only yours, not only mine, not only against. Marveled at the delicate variousness of her room's appurtenances, was also astounded by the crudity of her tastes, their similarity to his own. I love that one. I mean, that cheers me. That was insight, I think. Own. The text keeps flying off the page. Beer is continuous. Shots are little hammer blows. Winds sweep the earth, they sure do, in process of redefinition, parenthesis, sitting there stoned, having, quote, insights, unquote, parenthesis. To fall in love with this wonderful witch, what a fate. But to stay with her, what a drag. Because you are a drag. Quote, you, unquote, in the general sense. Though I come to think of it, in the specific one, too. How is it, quote, love, unquote, tends to turn me, me for sure, but I mean, I was being a little megalomaniac here. I said us. How is it, quote, love, unquote, tends to turn us into total idiots, as does hate, the indifferent being merely partial? Sleep on it. Do whales ever feel sorry for themselves? Going a little nuts, hearing just about anything on the radio as revelation. Let go, God damn it, let go. Air personalities, fighting or possibly pleading, quite possibly both. This is the killer speaking. Chantilly lace. Coffee, coffee. It was a night. Sweet early industrial period songs fill the oral, while the visual and the pulmonary are filled with the late industrial. The cerebral, visceral hurries right back to the beaver, her blessing song, its innumerable yet consistent, certainly structured forms. Right now, would I believe it if the telephone rang, and if it then sang, and what would I do then, who cannot carry a tune, want to be carried by it? Francis Gary Powers, dead in helicopter crash. Quote, tail rotor fell off, unquote. Progressive news, quote, we do not have either the technology or the time, unquote. Felt shitty, now sleepy. Stare over roofs of Baltimore, tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury. Novel composed of and including unqualified insults commissioned by customers. Legions of monumental resurrected gunfighters on Judgment Day. Surely there will be a universe for that, dear Heinrich Heine, who said, rest assured, you'll find what you think you need there. Quote, the Eskimo will find his polar bear, the polar bear will find no Eskimo, unquote. All that was horrible once will be beautiful now, reversibly up and down the gyrating ladders. Quote, treat yourself to some horse pussy boys, unquote, with all the gusto involved in pumping metals. And this is a homage to the, quote, Western, unquote, cette forme magnifique de la culture américaine, somewhat occasioned by the anticipated loss of a good woman being as hard to find as a good man being. Go sing the praises of the real I'm in here, busy communing with a small cactus and 3 oranges on a blue-green cloth in an invisible wicker basket. Helicopters of the occupying wobble by in the wind. That's probably it, but so is this. Water makes music in the shape of Anselm, and all who are or have been good to him for no or little reward. Oh, bossa supernova, no stopping any time. 2 bulls as gateposts, the twang of the bowstring. Quote, is this where we pay the parking fines, unquote? No, this is where we stare at the wall until a window appears to step through and sit on a sunny bed, hugging our knees or stretching, scratching a little, talking, or singing the song of the eggs and the women. Conch shell egg, white woman, gold egg, black woman with locks of leather, iron egg, black woman with 9 leather faces, carnelian egg, brown woman with azure blue locks, turquoise egg, blue woman with 6 faces like stars, crystal egg, white woman with 2 turquoise faces, copper egg, red woman with 9 terrifying heads, jewel egg, blue-green 2-headed woman, stone egg, dark red woman with iron locks. Good old Tibetan rock and roll. Quote, no, this is 211 West Madison. You want to go east, unquote. Yes, she was here. That is her footprint. A questing ant ran over his finger and stopped. She wondered how she could be so content to hear him speak of ants. Had the past years been too busy for music? They were remarkably handsome forms of the species, gentil and parfait. He certainly hoped this was true, found himself staring into the missing mirror, found himself here and there. Stoned ravens, staying with fiends. How many of her were there? All the pages blown back into his lap. Quote, and what is your name? Unquote. Quote, my name is Lap. Unquote. Looked into the missing mirror and saw the footprint, knew she had come to Baltimore, understood her gentleness, thought of internally happy Andre, the notion of the big house, outside of the big house they had spoken of, inside another one, tambourines in the street, sleep on it. How is it love tends to whales as continuums, sweeping the seas, redefining the world? Separate heads, living and dying, knowing the footprint, the missing mirror, saying, I could certainly use a few nice surprises. I think I know, I feel, I think. I wish I knew who it was called. I wish I knew who it was called. I wish I knew who it was called. Please kill engine trying impossible effort. Now I can't find you. I see you everywhere. Oldest trick in that God's bag. To divert myself, I consider, quote, the application of our moral notions to beings such as fish, who produce hundreds, nay, thousands of eggs in 1 year, unquote. Mr. Whitehead finds that diverting. Monsieur Stendhal, too, is quite diverting. They can both go to hell. I want to see you where I can find you. It might be possible to breathe there or difficult not to. Wrote that 6 months ago, found it again today. No more certain who you is than who you, no. Wrote that 6 months ago, found it again today. No more certain who you is than it was then. Flitting through the great maze from one clarity pattern to the one next to it, not higher. But what about love? The mockingbird is the most loving. It listens all day, half asleep, the other half listening. Then it stays up all night, sings all the other birds' songs for them. Now they are sleeping. I see that you know how from a certain angle your three-quarter profile pierces my heart with the flight of crystal hummingbirds. Ah, the impossible dream. He was fucking the fucking bird. She was fucking the male chauvinist pig bird. Inclinations turn us into natural forces. They interfere with human lives. Thus one might say of passionate human beings that they, quote, fall, unquote, as inclinations only become effective after a time of relative resistance. Papa Novalis, in the notebooks, page 152. Grunts and cackles next door. What is the minimum daily requirement or allowance? What? The maximum? Stare at blue fingernail caused by emotional car door aberration. Faltering under eyes that try hard to see who is there. The newborn dream more than half their sleeping time. What do they see? What waves come waltzing in? It is not is, it late too. That was who anyway. Mean memory, funny, may be alive, yes, thank you, think, yes, you. Assignment suffered, rest entitled, bite mosquito, leave ready. world-begetting baby magic, oblique recognition, broadly some person in a sense raging, triple consciousness moving hand over hand into the quadruple. When do we first see our watchers? Quote, ask questions. Yes, yes, ask questions, unquote. Hans Hofmann, beaming at student, rock dove climbing through air, far less effort than this one struggle through the dense particles of yearning time, only occasionally punctuated by some brief and enchanting south of the border tune. Oh brother, oh sister, oh sisters, oh brothers, forgive me for taking so long to perceive that lives do fit into tiny spaces until they don't, but move out in every direction so they cannot possibly fit anywhere anymore, more than the heady spirits of helium, until recaptured and coaxed inside a blue balloon, quickly ascending to its maker and the total equality of blue. Their condition is singular, who live as leaves by the sea. And that's that one.